Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to create a program that's going to input a first name and last name. We're going to start off simply with this. So we're going to need, actually we're going to need 3 strings. Okay, so we have no wheel. So we're going to start off simple, and then I'll show you some issues in here. So I'm going to do C out. What is your first name? And we'll do get the first name. And see out what is your last name. And this is going to give us a problem, which you'll see in a minute. So now we have some errors, so spelling does count. Alright, so that looks good, we look good in here. Alright, so let me show you the problem with the CN, which we've already addressed. And so, say my first name has 2 things. Or typical, you don't read and you type in first and last name. What is my name? So let's see what happens now when I do this. Okay, so it goes, what is your last name? Last name, Foster. Okay, so let's do some cosmetic stuff in here. So it's going to print what is your last name, but it never gets last name. And then it prints out what your last name is. It never actually gets the name in here. So what is your last name? And then last name is Foster in here. So we have kind of an issue. So we have to be very careful. But let me explain what's happening here. What's happening is as soon as it hits space, it's going to put in, it's going to put in its first name here, then it's going to print in what is last name, then it's going to say, oh wow, I have all this information in the buffer. So as soon as I hit a space, it's just like hitting return. So it's going to put that information into a buffer in here. So you have to be very careful. Now what is the big deal about that? I'll show you with the next thing. Let's create an integer. And let's just do A. And then we're going to do here. Let's just put it here. Simple enough. We're going to get your first name, then we're going to get your age, then we're going to get your last name, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's actually see what happens. Now remember, you have users that don't always follow instructions, so you have to take into consideration that they're going to type in whatever they feel like typing. So So let's try this again now. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to type in Richard Foster and let's see what happens now. Okay, it went crazy. What is your age? Okay, it doesn't know what to do with age. It never gets to age. What is your last name? Last name. Because when it went in there and it said age, it was already in there. It ignored it because there was no valid data for it. So that's why you have to be very, very careful about that. So the way you fix that is you use what's called a get line. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a get line. And where are we going to get the line from? We're getting it from CIN, the console in, and where are we going to store it? So we're going to store it here underneath. Then we're going to put in the same exact thing here. Let's put this here. Actually, let's put the age up here. Okay, this takes care of this. We don't need this. First name, and let's move this up here. So let's do the exact same thing right now. What is your age? Okay, so that worked. So what happened was it put the name in name, but that's a combination of first name and last name. So what good is that? We could have just done first name and last name. And you're 100% right, except that there's things that you can fix by using getLine in a string that you can't from CIN. So you have to be very careful about that. All right, so now let's do some functions in here. So I want to know what the length of the string is. How many letters do we type? Why is that important? It's important because say you're doing a zip code. Now you have to use a string for a zip code in case the leading character is a 0. Your zip code begins with a 0. It has to have 5 characters. So you're going to need to make sure that the length of it is 5. Otherwise, you're going to have to give them an error message in here. So let's create a integer, and we'll call it length. And then we're going to do the length equals. So now we can make use of the name functions from string. So I want to know the length of the string, so I can just do the string length. And it requires the parentheses. And then I'll print out all right, so let's see what happens. Let's run the program. All right, so the length of the string is 14. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The space is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so that works. Now we need to break down how are we going to get the first name and the last name in there. So that's going to be a little bit trickier, but it's not hard. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for a space in here. Now the problem is if they don't type in a space, then obviously we have it. So we're going to look for an actual space. So there is a function called find in here. And find just finds where the first value is. Then there's another function called substring. So for right now, let me show you substring. And we're just going to do cout. And we'll do I know I can type this. So this requires a where do you want to start and how many characters. So I'm just going to type, I happen to know that my first name has 8 characters. So let's just type in 8. Just happen to know that because we just counted them. So basically what they're saying is print out the first 8 characters. Print out a substring. We're going to start with the first character. Remember, it always starts on a 0. And we're going to print 8 characters. So let's see what happens now. All right, so the length is 14 and it printed out Richard in here. So that worked out pretty good. So if we, let's, I had an extra space, so need to find out why. Maybe should only print out 7. 0, how many characters ending? All right, so we're going to actually check this and let's print out 7 and see what happens. And we'll find out real fast. Okay, so that works out there. So 8, maybe it's only 7 characters in my name. Let me run that again. Yep, there's only 7 characters in my name. Okay, so that makes sense in there. So now what we want to do is, well, what happens if somebody's name is longer than 7 characters? So let's just go, that's my first name, which you know it's not. It's still going to print out that. So we need a way to find out where there is a space in here. So there's a thing called a find. So let's just, we're going to need to create an integer, another integer, and we can just call it position. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look and do the find for the position in here. So let's click on, we can leave this blank for right now. So the length of the string is in here. So we want position equals name dot find. Okay, now the thing is, what do we want to find? And where are we going to start? So we're looking for a space. And we're going to start at 0. And that's going to give us the position of the string, of the space. All right, so let's see what happens now. You know, again, do one thing, make a change. Do another thing, make a change. All right, so the length of the string is 14. The space was found at 7. And blah, blah, blah. We don't really care. All right, so that works out good. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. String space down at 7. Should be 8, unless I'm counting wrong. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 7. Okay, I counted wrong. So that makes sense. So now what we're going to do here is we know that we're able to find where the space is. So now we can assign it to the first name. So that's where the substring comes in there. I think we have a substring in here. So we're going to do first name equals okay, so let's see what that gives us. All right, nothing that I see. So let's see how that works. Okay, so what is, let's see, space found at 7. First name is, and it gave us nothing. Well, that's exciting. Do we do the first name is, okay, well, apparently there is an error in here. First name is in, first name in here. So that's depressing. Oh, here's why. All right. So now I'm hoping you realize how important it is doing one thing, getting it right, then going on and doing the other. Okay, so first name is Richard. All right, so then we just need some cosmetic. So now we need to get the last name. Well, the last name is pretty much the same thing. We're going to do last name equals name dot substring. And now, where are we going to start now? That's the difference. So we're going to start, we should start at position plus 1. So we're going to try that and see. And how many characters are we actually going to use? That's the whole thing. So now, that's simple. We need to find out we have position in here. So let's go in, and now you may be off by 1. So that's not a big deal to do. You're just going to find out in here. So what we really, the easiest thing to do is to go in here and calculate the length itself minus position. Now, when you're looking at this code, nobody's going to really know what it is. That's why your next step is to break this down and this down into 2 separate things. But let's get it working right. Let's see if it's there. Sometimes you're going to be off by 1. That's why you want to test it with different things just to make sure. So we have last name is all right, let's see what happens now. Okay, first name is and last name is there. So if you want to make sure that you're not including the space, you would just put them together, and if there's a space, then you know you're adding a space in there. So let's look at this code and see what we're doing. So we inputted a name, and we're counting on a space to be there. Now remember, if the user doesn't put in a space, then it's an issue. But in this particular case, we're not going to worry about that. So we put it in there. We calculated the length in here, and then we just said how long the length is. Now we wanted to find where the space was for after the first name. So we're going in here. We're assigning it. So we have name.find. So find this string, this little in here, starting at 0. And then we're just saying this is where they found it. And then we're assigning it. So take the name and just calculate the string, the substring. We want to start with the very first character, which is 0, and we want to do 7 characters. So then we're going to do print it out. Here we're going to start. Now remember the position, and again, don't confuse 7 characters with position being 7, because remember, it's really the 8th position since it's starting at 0. So sometimes that's a little tricky to remember, but that's okay. So what we're doing here, since position is 7, we want to start really on 8, which is really actually the 9th character in there. And how far do we want to go? We want to go the full length minus the position. So that should give us that. So that works. So let's put it in here, and you would want to do, for the last name, you would want to put a variable for position +1 and a something for here to calculate it. So let's create 2 more integers. Or you can name it starting and ending, whatever you feel comfortable so that it makes sense. So basically it's the first length and the second length. Last name, we could have put name in here. So now we're going to go in here, position. So now we want to calculate, let's see, the first length is going to be position +1. And the last length is going to be so here we're going to change this to first length, comma, last length. And that should take care of that. Let's test it and see if it gives us the same row. All right, so we have an error here. No semicolon. Okay. Those semicolons will get you every time. So let's start with first name and last name. So space found at, last name is Richard. First name is Richard, last name is Foster. There. So that works out good. Now let me show you a problem with the get line. So let's do this get line. We have, let's put this get line here, and then we'll do another get line. Actually, let's just do something different. Let's do cout. Sorry, do get line. We do need to do a cout. Enter new name. And then we'll do get line. Just copy this here. All right, then we're going to do age, and now we're going to do let's put in enter a new name. Now what's going to happen, in all probability, we're never going to get to this get line. So let me and then I will show you why. Or I will tell you why. Assuming it works. That is a lie. And look what happened. Nothing happened in here. I don't understand. All I entered in here. So let's just say that we were going to do first name and last name. So it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense in here. So let's do this. What is your first name? And we'll put it in first name. And last name. All right, let's see what happens. It never asked me, it asked me, but it never lets me put it in. So here's the reason why. We are fine over here. We're using a get line. So what happens is I'm typing in Richard and I'm hitting the enter key. What happens directly after the enter key is the new line gets eaten up by the get line. So that's fine. That's why when you do the CN, everything's peachy keen. As soon as you do the CN age and you hit the enter key, the problem is that enter key is still in the keyboard buffer because CN doesn't use it. So as soon as it goes to the get line, it goes, oh, they hit the enter key for it. So that will put in nothing in the last name. So the way you fix that, and I know you're dying to know the answer, is something called ignore. These are the only functions that you need to worry about for the string. There's tons of things, insert, erase, and all kinds of stuff in here. So what we're going to do in here, we're going to do a simple thing called ignore. And what ignore does, it allows you to dump as many characters as you want up to a certain character if they find that. In this particular case, we're looking for a new line character. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do cn dot ignore, and I'm just going to put 100 as an arbitrary number. So it'll dump 100 characters. For some reason, there's 100 characters in there, but we're looking for the new line character. So what it'll do, it'll just pitch the new line character. So let's see what happens now. Okay, space found at 1. That's okay. Well, that makes sense because we never had a thing. The -1 says that the space is never found. So that's what that means. First name is Richard. Last name is Richard. Okay, that makes sense because we didn't do anything. Enter first name. What is my age? And enter last name. Boom. All right, so let's run it this time again, actually putting in real data. All right, so that works. All right, So hopefully you grasp that in here. So we're not going to really be doing anything more in strings than this.